Everyone, my name is Davina Fankhauser with the organization Fertility Within Reach. I'd like to thank you for joining us for our Google Hangout on accessing infertility benefits through your employer. Today I have three very special guests with me who did just that. They advocated for infertility benefits with their employer, and we're going to learn a little bit more about what's involved and try to break it down and show you it's probably easier than you think, and it is an opportunity a lot of employees don't realize that they have. So I'm going to actually let my guests introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what their experience has been with communicating with their employers.
Gina Townsend. I'm a librarian, but I'm also the founder of the Broken Brown Egg blog. And my story is a little bit different because I live in Illinois, so there is a state mandate that covers infertility. But my biggest issue was in just kind of getting my job to understand what reproductive treatment would involve in terms of my hours or just my general well-being, and the fact that it was different. It wasn't necessarily like a maternity leave or a traditional sickness type of thing. So trying to just kind of advocate for myself and the fact that I may need to shift my hours a little bit differently because I'll be going through IVF, or explaining to them, what I would be capable of doing physically while I would be doing something so taxing. The benefit that I did have is working in a library. People are more, they want to research things, they want to know things, but it was important to really try to explain and be as honest and transparent as possible, because I wanted to set a standard so that if any other employees were to go through reproductive treatment, that they wouldn't have that barrier to get through, because I kind of would have, knocked the door down. So really being transparent about what it all entailed, as much as I was personal, as much as I was comfortable with sharing. I took it as my responsibility to be very clear and honest and transparent with the administration of my job about what fertility treatment looked like in terms of how we documented things, in terms of my hours, explaining to them what I would be physically capable of doing. They weren't very closed-minded about it. Like I said, Illinois covers infertility treatment, but I was the first person in my office to go through it. So I wanted to make sure that anyone coming after me wouldn't have to have those same conversations. There'd be a little bit more of an understanding from administration and from the managerial staff.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. That is actually part of our discussion. So really the mission of this Google Hangout discussion is to help everybody else who follows know what steps that they can take, and to try to make it as easy as possible for them. And so, we heard from Anna that so all of us, I think, have reached out to our HR departments. And that can be very nerve-wracking for people. So I just like to find out from you guys, how did you go about that? Did you think it was more difficult? Was it that you were more anxious? It was worse because you were worried about doing it than the actual experience?
Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing, is because I felt like this is going to be an awkward conversation that I'm pretty sure no one else here has had before. And I didn't want to come across as though I was asking for anything special. I wanted to make sure that what I was asking for was understood to be my right and normal, and that they knew she's being honest, she's being clear, she's explaining everything. She's not, looking for any kind of special treatment. She's asking for understanding of what is going on. So I think my nerves about it made it more complicated than it needed to be, because when I finally sat down and just explained everything, she was mostly like, oh, well, that makes sense. Okay, well, we can do this. And it was clearer. I've had harder conversations with the actual insurance people about things than the HR people. They understood. I think we get into our head, and sometimes that, it builds this wall up that doesn't need to be there. And once you start actually talking about it, you know what you're talking about, and it makes it easy.
Regina, I had actually seen an article that made me think of you and your experience. In 1998, the U.S. Supreme Court held in a court case, Bragdon versus Abbott, that the ability to reproduce or bear a child constitutes a major life activity. They also say that if you have a physical or mental impairment or limit of one or more major life activities, you're considered disabled, okay? So under that, infertility is protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And now another court case came subsequently after that that said, it's Laporta versus Walmart, that the district court ruled that an employee's Americans with Disabilities Act claim could proceed to trial, finding that infertility could constitute a disability under the ADA, and that the employee's request for time off, even with short notice, could be considered a reasonable accommodation. So, this is, the American with Disabilities Act protecting people to be able to take time off from work to go have blood work done or an ultrasound. And sometimes it is with short notice with treatment, and you never know how those follicles might respond. So, it's a little bit comforting to know that that's the case. There's one other court case to share with you, but I just want to know your thoughts, Regina. What do you think?
I think that's amazing, and I think that it's equally amazing how many people probably don't know that. That was one of the things that I was most concerned with. I wanted to make sure that I didn't seem like I was, casting aside my work responsibilities, or that I was, leaving anyone else holding the ball. And so it made the conversation about the fact that I may need this time feel really daunting. And I think having that kind of information would have taken some of that pressure off of me, and I would have felt more like I can really speak up and advocate for myself without, feeling like it's just me. I have something to back me up. I think that would have been vital information for me to have. So I think that's something that more people really need to know about, that, this is something that has been brought before the Supreme Court before, and you are protected for those random times where, you have to get right back to the clinic because something came up that they need to change something around. Or for people like me who had to travel about an hour and a half to get to their clinic, having that, understood that this is going to take me a little bit of time and I'll be back, and explaining to my job would have been so much easier, I think, with that. I mean, not that it was terribly as hard as some people have it, but having that in my back pocket, I think, would have been really cool information.
Right, it would give you more confidence. Well, here's another beauty. So the Family Medical Leave Act says, or it communicates, it entitles eligible employees to paid leave of up to 12 weeks because of a serious health condition. And the FMLA defines a serious health condition as an illness, injury, impairment, or physical or medical condition that involves inpatient care or continuing treatment by a healthcare provider. Therefore, an employee could demonstrate that his or her own infertility, or that his or her spouse constitutes a serious health condition under the Family Medical Leave Act. And there was even a court case, Culpepper versus Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, that said, their decision suggested that infertility treatment could be covered under the Family Medical Leave Act, where an employee is able to produce evidence that the time away from work is medically necessary and falls under one or more of the FMLA qualifying reasons. So, we have the American with Disabilities Act and the Family Leave Act that all support time off for infertility treatment.
Most of us, again, have no idea that that's there. I mean, I think when you're going through it, until you get your advocacy hat on and you really start digging in and researching, it's so overwhelming and scary and private and isolated. And I think getting this information out to people so that they know that they have, backup would be pivotal, I think, in people having these conversations with their jobs or just getting up the courage for even to start treatment. I know that there are some people who feel like, I'm not even going to have this conversation. I'm just not even going to do anything. This is going to be a problem for me professionally, and so I'll just wait until a better time. And I think having stuff like this be more accessible to people, that they understood that this was something that was out there, would change a lot of people's lives. So I'm astounded that these things exist. And I am an advocate. I do research.
For me, it's about getting the information out there to people to be able to use. But I think you are right in saying that it's a backup. Like, you went forward not knowing this. Anna went forward not necessarily having this information. So the issue is, you can still approach your employer in a conversational way. Like Anna said, she just asked, well, why don't we have this benefit? And you asked, how about I get some time off to do, to meet my healthcare needs? And then if you receive some pushback, like Dr. Chen mentioned, some people haven't received the greatest response, you can say, well, here's some information for you to consider. This may impact your decision on whether I'm allowed time off or not. So, you don't have to go guns blazing with this information, but at the same time, having this as a backup can really help give you more confidence in the communication you're about to have, I think, anyway.
And it takes some of the nerves off, because I think there were times, like, even though, like I said, I had a pleasant or more pleasant experience with my job, there were times where I knew, well, I've already, kind of, been coming in at later hours because of the blood work and this and the other. So I feel bad about coming back and saying, well, it's now time for my embryo transfer and I need a little bit more time. And there's that anxiousness of feeling like you're inconveniencing everyone else with your problem once again. And, infertility, it makes you feel like you're just, and so I think having this would have taken some of that anxiety off too, is feeling like, no, I had the time for blood work and I need the time for the embryo transfer, and not feeling like, here I go again. So I think that's a huge part too.
So the better informed the patients are, the more conversation they can have with the HR department. Regina, what has your experience been following up with the HR?
Well, the biggest thing for me was really more with my manager, because once everything was really squared away with her, then it kind of trickled up. So it was really just it is a continuous conversation of, here's what I'm doing right now, here's what I'll need in the next month or so, here's what I'm looking at in terms of my treatment. And again, it was because I'm so open, it was not something where I felt as terrified as I could have after the initial conversation when I did. But then the other things that I did do was I just tried to encourage and educate my community. So being a librarian, I am able to do things that go beyond me and my scope. So I used National Infertility Awareness Week to host a panel at the library about infertility. And I had actually the doctor that I eventually went to, I had a reproductive endocrinologist there. I had someone from the Department of Children and Family Services to talk about foster to adopt. I had someone there from a private adoption agency. I had someone there from Fertility for Colored Girls. So I had a way to kind of not only educate, my job, but also the community that my library serves about what to do. How do you talk to a doctor? How do you find a doctor? How do you look at your insurance? So that it wasn't just me educating myself or even my immediate supervisor or the HR department, but how can we educate everybody so that everybody understands how important this is and everybody understands what their options are, and that there are other people in this community who need this no matter what, financial tax bracket they're in or whatever. This is something that affects all of us, and these are the resources that are available to you. So trying to just make that conversation ongoing, even beyond just the insurance benefits, was the biggest thing that I've tried to do.
I love you, but you know that.
I know that's so awesome.
You both are amazing. And I know Anna had to leave, and I understand that. But, every advocate, it like Anna was saying, this is a human rights experience, that we're going after. And I love that we're able to do this Google Hangout, because we are, in a way, being a support and a resource to other people who want to try this moving forward. And men do this as well, too. So I worked with, I actually spoke at a conference with a man named Ed. And Ed had gone to his employer in previous years, multiple years, asking them for IVF benefits, and they said no. And after I met with Ed and I told him about, some resources and a tool that Fertility Within Reach had created, he went back to his HR department, shared the tool, and they said, we can see how offering IVF benefits would be an affordable option, for us to provide. And so they adopted another plan that people could choose from, which carried infertility benefits. And now the University of Michigan offers this benefit plan to nearly 8,500 employees. And I know that there were other patients that were communicating with HR, and fertility doctors that were affiliated with the university were talking to them as well. So I think it's really a mix of having the information, approaching them with good communication skills, and coming together and trying to, make a difference for the good of everybody. For me, this has always been about a win-win-win situation. It's good for the couple and their future family. It's good for the employers. It's good for the insurance companies, because it saves money in the long run. And yet I don't take lightly the courage that it takes to go to your human resource department and talk about one of the most private and possibly painful experiences of your life. But what I tell people is, when they experience being an advocate for themselves, it's empowering. And then once they know how to do it in this one thing, then they're doing it for other issues in their life, or they're helping their friends and family become advocates for themselves. And it's training for when they're parents, because they're going to have to be an advocate for their child. So why not practice advocacy in a way that's going to benefit you, and you're provided the tools and support that you need? So I love this, and I'm so grateful that you guys participated. Do you have any final words you want to share?
I think for me, the biggest thing is just do it. Just don't don't procrastinate about it, because there was a time where, you know, before I finally was able to have the conversation, our insurance changed at my job. And it wasn't that infertility wouldn't be covered, but specific doctors and things like that that are the most prevalent here in Illinois wouldn't be. And it was just really terrifying to me to think, well, now I don't have insurance. I felt like I don't have insurance because the doctors that I knew most about weren't available to me. But it took just kind of doing that private research and deciding, you know, I'm going to do this no matter what. I'm going to look into whoever I can or talk to whomever I can and not hold myself back any longer. And I think that with some people who do have the insurance, or they do have to have that conversation with HR, the fear of it all can, like I said before, just stop them, and they feel like, well, this will be too impactful for me professionally, and I'm just going to wait. But I feel like this is so important. It's so important to you emotionally and personally, that you owe it to yourself to get informed and get motivated, find ways to encourage yourself even when you're terrified, and just do it. Just go for it. Ask for help.
Thank you very much. My thanks to Anna Curie and Dr. Serena Chen and Regina Townsend of the Broken Brown Egg for participating in this Google Hangout discussion on accessing infertility benefits through your employer. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next conversation.